Thanks for joining me. This is James Shippey. I'm a breaking news anchor for KOIN 6 in Portland, CW. I'm especially excited today because I've got Ernest Warren, a defense lawyer here in Portland, Oregon. Ernest, it's so great for you to join me today. How's everything going this morning?
Going great. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be talking with you again, James.
Definitely. I mean, we obviously had a big conversation. It feels like a lifetime ago, the way news works, obviously, Ernest. But we were talking about the Diddy verdict, right? Because, I mean, that was top of mind at the time. It feels like a lifetime ago, basically. But, I mean, now, we're coming up on sentencing for Diddy, finally. I mean, once the sentencing comes October 3rd, how long would that have been between, and is that something normal?
Yes, usually sentencings happen quicker for people who are in custody, usually within 90 days. What
Hmm.
happens many times that didn't happen in this case, I'm sure, because they're reserving the right to appeal, is that the pre-sentence, United States probation officer writes a pre-sentence report for the judge. Usually, in that period of time, an interview of Sean Combs would have occurred with the presence of his attorneys and outside the presence of the U.S. attorneys with the United States probation officer who writes the report. But when you're holding back from a defense point of view to preserve rights for appeal, you don't allow the interview to happen, but the report is still written and the guidelines are factored in by the probation officer that alerts the judge to what these type of cases all over the United States, um, how judges have held these cases in the past, and what the judge should sentence within a range unless he's going to upward depart.
I see. I see. And that's a good point. Well, Ernest, and look, we're going to get into all that, but I'd be remiss if we didn't first just get a little bit more background on you, because obviously I'm new to Oregon. You're a defense lawyer. You've been practicing law for quite some time, over 30 years in my research. Can you just kind of give some folks some background on you? First of all, just how long have you been practicing law here in Portland, Oregon in general, and what brought you to become a defense attorney? What inspired you to practice law?
Well, it's interesting. I've been practicing law in Oregon and Washington. I passed the bar in both states 36 years ago. We started after I had practiced at the Metropolitan Public Defender for about 18 months. Experienced attorney by the name of Ken Walker, who's now a senior judge in Multnomah County Circuit Court, said, "We got to go out and start a firm, and you're going to be the managing partner." And so I've been here ever since. I've tried over 100 trials. I've won most of my trials, and that's what I offer to my clients. I do both civil injury cases for plaintiffs, and I do criminal defense in both federal and state courts, Oregon, Washington, and I've tried civil cases in California and practiced federal law in Alaska, Texas, Louisiana,
Mm.
Pennsylvania.
Well, you've been all around,
Yeah,
basically.
yes, yes.
Definitely. And you say you've been practicing, or you it was 36 years that you had mentioned. Um, what got you? Because a lot of folks always wonder what gets someone into law, right? Or what gets someone into therapy or any line of work, right? And I assume, most people think, oh, you may see some injustice, or maybe you've used to watch some, TV shows when you were growing up, and you love seeing lawyers go out there and try and prove someone's innocence or try and get the bad guy. What brought you to the field of law?
Thank you for asking. Well, my dad, when I was very young, I couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. He asked me a question because he was a professional himself. He was an insurance broker.
Oh.
And he asked me, he said, "Son, there's only three real professions in life, and there are two extra professions. He said doctor, lawyer, preacher, and insurance broker and accountant. Which one are you going to be? And I, my dad and I had such a. I'm named after him, Ernest Warren Jr., and we had such a close relationship. I mean, it stunned me even at that early age. And I said, Dad, I got to think about it. And so we sat down and in our home and had a little lunch. And I really thought about it. I was like, I don't know if I could be a preacher, and I don't know if I could be a doctor. And back in the 60s, the show came on, Perry Mason. And Perry Mason pulled up in his Lincoln Continental convertible with suicide doors. He got out and was a great guy in the courtroom. And I looked at him and said, Dad, that's what I want to be. I want to be a lawyer. And I've been driving a Lincoln ever since. We didn't have any, and unfortunately, we didn't have many people of color who were role models for me. But I did, when I was about 12 years old, my dad introduced me to a judge, Aaron Brown, who was the second person of color, I believe, in the state of Oregon to be a judge, and he was a great mentor for me and a great guy. Just Judge Aaron Brown. So
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, I mean, and I think in any line of work, when you're trying to break down barriers, mentorship plays a huge part, I think, in getting someone to that next level of professional stuff, or like kind of breaking these barriers, because it's easy. Sometimes we want to do like big things, right? But sometimes we may not have examples or someone to encourage us, right? Because these fields aren't easy to do. And I want to make sure I have this right. You opened the first African American law firm in Portland or Oregon in general, and either or, how big of a deal was that for your family, for the community?
thank you for asking. It was in the state of Oregon. We opened the first African American law firm with three principal partners. And yes, it was very big for our family. It was a source of pride. And my partner, Ken Walker, my major partner, who's now a judge, my other partner, Yolanda Watkins, she's currently the first woman of color judge in Clackamas County Circuit Court. We always, in my mindset, it was always that we had to represent the people. And that's not always a glamorous undertaking or a profitable undertaking. It's more, early in my career, I did a lot of insurance defense work and represented three different insurance companies. And that, they sit on a treasure chest of money. And at some point, I went to trial lawyer college in 1995. An attorney who just passed away, Jerry Spence, taught me. And he said it was evil to represent insurance companies. It's not evil, but I said, okay, you're right that I should represent people. And from that moment forward, I kind of just focused on representing people and representing good causes, nonprofits, and doing federal criminal defense. I think as a young lawyer in Phoenix, Arizona, I won my first 12 trials prosecuting, and that seemed really easy to me. Defense side is a lot more challenging when you have somebody's life in your hands, when they might be innocent, when they might have psychological issues. You have to really take the time to really take a deep dive into what's going on in their lives.
You know, Ernest, that's a great question, because sometimes I've heard of this. Like I said, and this is going off just watching TV, watching, TV shows, you always see the prosecution side and you see the lawyers. And a lot of times, I have my degree in Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, right? And you see these guys interacting with each of these guys and gals. I don't know how much that is. It seems like it's more cordial. Is that real, or is that just TV stuff?
Well, it gets cordial over time. I was blessed. My first 5 jury trials in Multnomah County back in 1989, I won them. When I first went in for my trials, um, nobody looked at me. I didn't, they looked down on me. I would go into courtrooms and they would say, "Where's your attorney?" but then, even though I was in a suit and tie like I am right now, but then after I won that first jury trial, my colleagues said, "Ah, you were lucky." After I won my second jury trial, they still weren't talking to me. After I won 5 jury trials in a row, then all of a sudden they want to be my friend. And so, yeah, so, through the jury trial process for me, and that's why I'm a jury trial lawyer, I gained the acknowledgement that I needed to be effective at my job.
Well, that makes sense, definitely. And the fact that you talked about maybe your desire at some point to what's the right word I'm going to say here? You said that you worked for the insurance companies initially, but then you kind of had this. You said a mentor there, like, hey, instead of jury trial, do something for the people, and like a shift of focus. Because I know it's different. Because I think about anytime people make insurance claims or I guess lawsuits, things of that nature, right? Is that's kind of the nature we're talking about, right? And having to
Yes,
defend the insurance companies from having to pay out if someone's injured or
right.
God forbid killed in a situation.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And I just settled a wrongful death case last year, a horrible case. Yes, so it was Jerry Spence. And Jerry Spence at one time was the greatest trial lawyer in the world, to be honest with you. He really was. And he was my teacher. And he told me, look, and he had did insurance defense and he had prosecuted crimes. And I don't know how he saw the light to say, hey, we need to, people need to be, people that can't afford lawyers need to be represented. And it's not, your path to making a whole bunch of money, but you can make an honest living. And I bought into that. uh, I bought into that
Yeah.
32 years ago. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, that's really great to hear, and good. I'm glad he put that bug in your ear. Well, Ernest, we're gonna take a quick break, but on the other side, we're gonna talk about what we're gonna do the tea on what we're here for, because of course, it is time to talk about Diddy, right? About
Yes.
what kind of restitution he will have to pay to the, society, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, or, how soon will he get out? How long or how short will a possible prison sentence be? So we will talk about that on the other side of the break. The Diddy trial. Obviously, that's what we've been speaking about before. Obviously, with Diddy, there was a big verdict with him quite some time ago, and he was found not guilty on count 1, racketeering, conspiracy, 2, sex trafficking, count 4, sex trafficking, but he was found guilty of engaging in prostitution for 2 counts, which were the lesser ones. Obviously, his lawyers argued that that the fact that he did get off, or so to speak, he didn't get that racketeering charge because he could have been in prison for the rest of his life.
Yes.
Ernest, talk to me here, right? Because a lot of people aren't talking about this trial anymore. Like I said, it was huge at the time, especially when the trial was happening, but it's kind of been forgotten. But I'm sure it's going to be ramping up when this show airs. The verdict will be pretty much decided, reached. I'm sorry, not the verdict, but the sentencing will be known within a week. What's your thoughts here? Because what's your thoughts? Because obviously Diddy's been trying to get out since that verdict a couple times and been denied. Um, what's your take here? What do you think's going to happen?
Well, we can rest assured eventually because he was convicted of 2 counts of sexual trafficking for prostitution across state lines that he's going to get out. And the question is, what is the amount of time? The other thing that we as attorneys have to do is we have to set the matter up for appeal. And I think that his defense counsel has got an A in getting ready to set his case up for appeal by far. Um, they have a defense that really what was going on here was not a crime at all on appeal, but Sean Combs was being a amateur uh, pornog- pornographer, where really he was sitting back with his camera and watching as Cassie Ventura and victim number two, who goes unnamed, were having freak offs at hotels, and he was just videotaping these freak offs, and then he would watch the freak offs with Cassie Ventura and the other victim afterwards. You got to understand that everybody that participated signed consent forms, which which is a total defense usually to sexual offenses, criminal sexual offenses. If someone consents to, and they're, of course, they got to be over 18. We're talking about adults. If they consent to sexual conduct, uh, usually that means there's no crime. But in this case, it's different. What the prosecutors, what the United States attorneys, the Southern District of New York, basically are saying is that Sean Combs paid for prostitutes to come across state line to hotels to have consensual freak offs with Cassie Ventura and with another victim. The problem in each of those arguments is Cassie Ventura was the one who paid and arranged for the male prostitutes to come have sex with her. That's the problem. Sean didn't pay for that, Mr. Combs. She did, and she had these sexual freak offs, and they're on videotapes, and everybody's consenting. The other problem is when this transportation to engage in prostitution first originated in 1910. It was known as the White Slave Traffic Act because what white men were doing was commercially transporting white women across state lines for prostitution and other sexual purposes and putting these white women in danger. Now they subsequently changed it to the Mann Act, but that's what the original purpose.
That was with the boxer Jack Johnson, right? I hate to interrupt you, right? Well, I know a lot of folks
Yeah,
always mention that, right? It almost
yeah,
feels like it was a kind of a racial thing. Stop. He was kind of flaunting his white women around the world, gallivanting, you know, you know,
yeah,
you know,
yes.
big champion and cocky with it. So they had to do something about that, right?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, and
I
it's
mean, they wanted to do something about it. They didn't have
yeah,
to, obviously.
yeah. I
Make an
mean,
example.
because of racism, they
Hmm.
thought a great fighter like Jack Johnson could not beat another fighter of another race, and he proved them wrong. And he made a lot of money for it, as people in entertainment do. And yes, so they made that law, but they also had a law which was, excuse me, it was where you could not um, um, immigrate a person from another country for immoral purposes. And now, what happened in this case? I mean, this is really opening up a whole bunch of cases for appeal. These two particular cases were cited by the defense. That's why they get an A from me. One case is the F. Drew Caminetti versus the United States case, where this happened back in 1917, and Mr. Caminetti obviously was white, and he had a consensual relationship with a woman, and wanted her to come to Reno. They were not from Reno, and he brought her to Reno, and they cited him for sexual trafficking. And the reason is, even though money was not involved, they said because of the Commerce Clause, you can still apply this crime to cases, even though it was consensual, it wasn't for money, they still reached it for immoral sex. And you got to remember, all of these cases in the past, the victim had to be the woman. So they're making Cassie Ventura and another victim the woman in this case, but really they're the co-conspirator, they're the participant. And so to this day, you still can't have a woman come and be your concubine. And what I mean by that is you're unmarried, living with her, having sex with her, and cohabitating, which many people in modern times do. And so that's kind of the problem. And then in the other case, it was a very similar case. They said that you just can't bring a woman from London, as this one gentleman wanted to do in the Biddy case, and for immoral purposes. If you're not married, it's immoral. And so this guy had to go to prison because he brought a woman from London. So all of these issues are being raised, and they have all kinds of First Amendment implications for the LGBTQ community. We know there are certain religions, Muslims and Mormons, who have poly relationships.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be
Polyamorous.
married. Yeah. But they want to be all married, but the law prohibits them from that type of behavior. And that stuff is starting to surface again. And Mr. Combs's defense team is bringing it up under the First Amendment: freedom of speech, freedom of press. You and I couldn't even talk about this. The government probably wouldn't want us to talk about this at all, because the U.S. government brought this case against Sean Combs. But the freedom of press under the First Amendment protects us. Freedom of free exercise of religion, and the government can't establish one. Um, Free speech and the right to peaceably assemble. The First Amendment is a very strong thing. I think the argument, though, is really interesting, but yet the Supreme Court of the United States has said in the past that the First Amendment free speech doesn't apply to obscenity. So maybe pornography might be obscenity, and it's a subjective test. The Supreme Court of the United States says they know it when they see it. I remember 11 years ago, I was in Manhattan, and I seen a presidential candidate that made a naked statue of a presidential candidate, and it was not very favorable. And I wonder what the Supreme Court would have said about the creator of that statue. Would they say that that's obscene? And we see
Mm-hmm.
many naked statues that certainly um, um, are considered art. But has life evolved now to where pornography is not obscene for purposes of the First Amendment? So, and
Yeah.
it wasn't commercial. So it's interesting.
That is
All,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
and as you say, I see that's one of the things they're gonna be trying to argue is, hey, he's just doing some pornography with his companions. And I can't help but you bring up this video here. Once this footage came out, that was kind of the thing of that's when things revved up. That's when the feds came after him, right?
That's
Um, so quickly, because we're about to wrap up here in the next minute or so. Um, what? What are your thoughts? You think he's going to be home for the holidays? Do you think he's going to have to maybe spend another year or two at the very least?
Well, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I think the judge that video that the judge has seen over 100 times of him assaulting Miss Cassie Ventura has influenced him in a way that Mr. Combs has to do time. What every judge looks at is known as the sentencing guidelines, and those are factors that every from prior sentences that every judge looks at to determine how I can be fair but not too punitive for Mr. Combs. The guideline says he should be looking at about 33 to 41 months. The government wants 4 years. That's longer. I wouldn't be surprised if the judge went to the top of the guideline range and gave him 41 months because of the fact that, you know, this violence that we saw 100 times from this video of assaulting Cassie Ventura. I think that would lead the judge to say, he should get 41 months. Now, what does that mean? You're right. He still gets credit for the time served, so you're going to take that year off the 41-month sentence. We haven't heard, like we said last time, we haven't heard of bad boy behavior, so he gets good time, and he could even get a job that would cut the rest of the sentence down as well. You know,
While
and
in the pen, as you say,
yeah,
right? Yeah, doing that.
yes.
Yeah, doing
So
your good deeds
probably,
in there, right?
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So probably by next year, this time he will be, uh, supervised released.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say this time next year or a little longer, maybe he'll be supervised released back into the community. And I think he learned a valuable lesson. We can't indulge in vanities that way. And I mean, hopefully he learned a valuable lesson that you can't
Hopefully.
go around doing stuff like that. But these people are entertainers; they're rock stars. I mean, um, of any color, this type of conduct is going on all the time. So,
Of course, yeah. They say with the music business, people are famous. There's all kind of stuff that regular folk probably would be shocked, right? It's just the access and excess. So look, Ernest, once again, we got to go, but thank you so much again for joining me. It's been very enlightening just talking about this Diddy trial, the other crime story that's really huge right now, and of course your background. I find it fascinating and very inspiring. But yeah, let's hopefully be in touch again. We can maybe talk again and see what's happening next time when anything out there in the world that involves law. And we'll definitely be watching to see how this sentencing shakes out.
thank you, James. I'll always try to make myself available for you to talk about these topics. They're very interesting, and I believe in my job serving people, the people should really know what the law is if we can give it to them.
That's right. I totally agree. Knowledge is power. So, all right. Well, you have a good one, okay, Ernest?
Thank you, James.
Thanks.